So, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Today we have a very special guest who's joining us all the way from Arizona in the United States, and she is a best-selling author. She's the best-selling author of A Practical Law of Attraction, Align Yourself with Manifesting Conditions. So she's going to join us now. Yep. Yeah, can you hear me? I'm just introducing you there. So you're talking about your best-selling book and what you're up to. Yep. Great. Hi,
Hey,
Victoria.
I'm here.
Great to have you on board. Yeah, I was just telling our guest that I looked on Amazon, and your book is still #1 in spiritual growth,
It is.
hypnotherapy, Kindle store, and hypnosis. It's been there for a long while. What?
It
Yeah.
has been.
I,
It has
I'm gonna
been.
take some notes and find out how I can get my book to or my books, as you can see, to stay at #1 for as long as yours. So I'm really looking forward to this interview because obviously, you know, we speak at similar conferences and so on and so forth. So we'll get an idea. And I mean, last time we spoke to sort of copy the viewers in, I think that the way you talk about the law of attraction, it kind of simplifies it in an easy way. And certainly on my journey, Victoria, my learnings of the law of attraction, you know, you take what you want out of it, but I think you gave a process, because I think sometimes it can be quite confusing, maybe just for me, but I think you made it quite straightforward. And I guess that's what the book does. So welcome to the show, and tell us a bit about how you got into the law of attraction. I know your background is hypnosis as well, and how did you get into the law of attraction?
Well, thank you so much for having me. So we met back in HypnoBiz,
Correct,
and
yeah.
we were planning to do this interview back then. So it's been a long time in coming, and so I'm just really grateful. So I actually have a background before I got into hypnotherapy as a stockbroker, and I was just really burnt out on my job, and so I started taking a lot of personal development courses. And during those courses, we really tapped into some really interesting things that you could do with the power of your mind. And I started reading a lot of books back then from, you know, Shakti Gawain, who wrote Creative Visualization, and Deepak Chopra and Tony Robbins. And a lot of these concepts of law of attraction already started appealing to me even before I became a hypnotherapist. And so I wanted to come up with a way. It was just one of my very first deliberate law of attraction manifestations was I wanted to come up with a way to create a website where people could take the seminar at home, ultimately. And so one of the main things that people were doing during these seminars were a lot of closed eye techniques, visualizations, meditation, whatever you want to call it. And I wasn't a hypnotherapist at the time, so I wasn't 100% sure, you know, if my visualizations, if my meditations were going to work, if they were going to be powerful enough. Like I knew that they worked when I took the seminar, but I wasn't sure. So I went on a search to find out, like, well, what would make me qualified to to create these magical recordings that would help people to change their life. And I went on like a couple of years search, and it just sort of hit me out of nowhere to get certified in hypnotherapy. And so that's how so all of this, the law of attraction, really was in my language before I ever even became a hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
And honestly, you know, it always surprises me because, you know, it's like you understand how this works, but there's a lot of hypnotherapists out there that only recently heard about the law of attraction, maybe through watching movies like, you know, the popular one called The Secret.
That's right, yeah.
You know, a lot of people just recently got exposed to this, but this is not a new thing. Like, this is something that has been around since the dawn of time. And, you know, so when you watch a movie like that, which it helps to inspire you that, like, maybe we do have a little bit of say-so over how our life is going.
No, absolutely. And that's really interesting you say. And I mean, for me, in my journey, Victoria, because I have a science background and I've tried to make sense of it scientifically, over the years.
Yeah.
And I sort of grappled with things over the years, and in terms of, you know, half in, sort of half out type thing. I have one foot in the spiritual camp, one foot in the science camp, and I'm quite honest and open about that.
Yeah.
But for me, how some of these things work is beyond any explanation. The only thing I can put it down to is that I think science has taken us so far, and it's been fantastic. We've learned so much about the brain, about the body, about so many things, but I think we're like on the edge of a pier. There's an ocean we don't understand, and one must have an open mind. And certainly in my experience, I feel, and you know, like you mentioned there, I sort of read the Wayne Dyer books, the Chopras and The Secret. Some resonated more than others. I like the work of Abraham. I think, if nothing else, she just relaxes me whenever I feel stressed, and I can put the audio on, and I'm not expecting anything to get anything in one sense, but I sort of just tune in, and it's just sometimes good to feel good, so to speak. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, I mean, I have a lot of friends in the scientific world, and a lot of people who work from a science base, and you know, some of them are sort of, you know, mixed feelings around this, but for me, I just think that there is a method in the madness, so to speak, because the reality is that when you feel aligned on your path, and I think that irrespective of which sort of, you know, therapy you use or coaching model you use, there's a common theme in all of them, really, and it's about finding purpose. It's about aligning yourself. That's the reality. There's just a different way of putting it in writing, really. But what's your take on it? I mean, how do you, I always, you sort of come from a background of, you know, business, and you mentioned there the banking sector and so on and so forth, and obviously in the world of hypnotherapy, it's like sometimes it's like people have got difference of opinions the way things work. But how do you sort of, what's your take on when people sort of see this as being, you know, woo-woo or just out there? I mean, you explain it really well, to be fair, so interesting to see you.
Yeah. Well, okay, so it's a lot less woo-woo than I would say. It's maybe 1/8 woo.
Yeah.
You know, and the rest of it is all very, you know, it's very methodical, very logical. So the way that I break it down is I believe that there are 8 conditions that need to be all in alignment in order for you to manifest. Now, some schools of thought will say, okay, there's 3 steps to manifesting, there's 5 steps, there's 7 steps. You know, they have all these, you know, various different step-by-step approaches. And so I don't necessarily believe that it follows a particular step-by-step approach, because you might be aligned already with one area, with one aspect of that. So one aspect of that is taking action. And this gets left out of a lot of law of attraction books, is actually that you do have to take action. So it's all about, you know, knowing very specifically what is your desire. And that would be one of the conditions. Maybe that one's already in place for you. Then it's aligning your thoughts with that desire. So are your thoughts, and we have so many unconscious thoughts. We have 50 to 70,000 thoughts going through our mind in a given day. And so are all of those thoughts aligned with your desire, or are some of them, you know, telling you that, oh, you can never do that happen, or you have the uncertainty about that, you have a lack of belief. So, you know, we want to have a desire. We want to have our thoughts aligned with that desire. We want to be aligned with that emotionally, because I do believe that, you know, feeling has a lot to do with your being able to manifest, having, you know, your vibration where it needs to be, having your, you know, you might be thinking one thing, but you might be seeing something else. So having your imagination, your visualization, whatever you're imagining in your mind, is that lined up, you know, with your desire. Where we kind of tap into that woo-woo part is what I call creative attraction. And creative attraction is that part where, okay, just imagine that, you know, if you're, you know, say a religious person or spiritual person, and you maybe, you know, you pray, and, you know, that, you know, who are you praying to? What are you expecting to receive from those prayers? So there is that place that's outside of us that things happen, that we receive information, we receive intuition, receive gut instinct, and we receive ideas. Those ideas that just kind of come to you out of nowhere, that I consider is like the creative attraction. It's where, I mean, you know, Beethoven used to wake up in the middle of the night and you know, and compose.
That's a great point. It's a great point because, you know, certain people do certain things that they're probably not supposed to do, and you look at like a Beethoven, and they sort of defy all the odds, really, in one respect. And I mean, there's some of the research now in science is sort of suggesting, you know, activity in the brain before the person does something physically. So there's sort of a debate now that's opened up again. Are the thoughts coming from somewhere else? Are they, you know, and that's sort of $1 million question, really, that, you know, I don't think anyone can answer that at this moment in time. But what I find really fascinating about the way you sort of talk about law of attraction is that, I mean, I think for me, this is just my impression, and I could be wrong, and I say this respectfully in terms of people's perception of it. I think sometimes people perceive the law of attraction as being, okay, I'm going to manifest that car, that job, that partner, and all my life's going to go perfectly well, and I'm going to live happily ever after. And I think that is probably down to some of the, and I don't want to like, you know, point the finger. People write things, and if there wasn't for people start talking about it, we wouldn't be here, and then sort of we build upon knowledge. But I think people have got this sort of misinterpretation, just my perception, that, you know, like you said, that you don't have to do anything. Obviously, you've got to put action in, but also when things don't go your way. I think that's a true test, Victoria, when, you know, you get up. I certainly have those days where everything that could go wrong goes wrong, but I don't get too overwhelmed, you know, and I haven't done for a long time, because I think, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to end up where I need to be, you know, just stay with it, you know. And what do you think about that when you have a wobble and you know, there's sort of days that everything that could, you know, go wrong, that you've got planned, goes wrong, and how do we sort of stay in that vibration when that happens?
I think that's where the real work is, because, you know, law of attraction, it's about growing yourself into the person who's in alignment with the things that you want. And so when we have those things that are not quite going our way, either, you know, we may be creating that through our subconscious, maybe through old, you know, habits, patterns, things, you know, we've set that up at some point, you know, because we're always making decisions, we're always making choices. And so each and every moment is a moment to manifest, when, you know, but manifesting, it's not magic. It's, it, you know, and I think that's, you know, what a lot of the schools of thought out there kind of want us to buy into, or not buy into, but it's the way it's perceived. It gets perceived as, oh, I'm just going to manifest something. Manifesting is simply to take something from your mind and turn it into reality. It's to take something from your mind and to turn it into something physical. But there's a process that goes through that, and it begins with, you know, what are we thinking about? And our thoughts, ultimately, they do take form. Our thoughts become, if we think about and dwell on that thought long enough, whether it's negative or positive, it's going to take some sort of form. We're going to feel that thought. We're going to feel that energy somewhere in our body. If we continue, you know, to think about that, well, that energy ultimately is going to cause us to behave and act in a certain way. We're eventually going to take action on that thought. And as we line ourselves and have that feeling, have that belief, and have those behaviors and have those actions, we're also going to tend to attract other people, other situations, other circumstances that are in alignment with who we are. We're certainly, if we're in a negative space and we continue to dwell on that negative space, we're probably not going to attract positive, happy people who believe in us and believe in our goals, and, you know, to come and partner with us and to buy our products, or to do, you know, to do the things that we ultimately want them to do. So, you know, it is up to us ultimately to, you know, get in alignment with what we want that reality to be. And that's what I consider manifesting. I consider it you know?
Absolutely, and that's really interesting. And in terms of belief, you know, our beliefs, and how do our beliefs affect us in terms of manifesting, Victoria? So what we believe, our thoughts, what we sort of continuously think about. Is there like a time frame? I mean, some people say, you know, what is it, 17 seconds? I don't know. But is there sort of a time frame where we hold on to a thought or a belief that it starts to manifest? Or do you sort of have the perception that it's just obviously in the better place we are mentally, the better work we're going to do, and the more opportunities we'll see and draw into our lives?
Well, our beliefs definitely impact our ability to manifest anything, and we're going to get tested, just like you had mentioned. You know, there's going to be things that go wrong. I'll give you I'll share a little story with you. So you know, I was in the process of creating my my HypnoCloud apps, and I had at the time, my idea to grow my app business was, I had about 13 or 14 of them in the App Store, and they were doing relatively well. And so my idea was to grow them from the number I had to 50. Well, fast forward to like a couple months after getting all that together and starting to submit these to the App Store, Apple told me, no, we're not going to accept any more of these, what they were kind of clone apps. Even though like the content was different on all of these, they were cloned. So I had a choice at that time. I had a choice to basically just throw in the towel and say, okay, well, my idea didn't work. And so I could just, you know, my belief was being challenged. My belief was being tested at that time. Well, what am I going to do now? And so by being open to, no, this is a thing, like this is happening. I am manifesting having this work. It just isn't going to work in the exact way that I had it pictured in my mind. And so I took what they said, and they basically said that what you need to do is you need to create an all-in-one app. You basically need to put these all in the all-in-one app. And I was a little resistant to that at the time, but I realized in hindsight that that was actually the best way to go. So we went back to the drawing board. We created this and launched it back in August, and the app is actually doing quite well. And it's actually doing far better than those 50 apps would have ever done.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you. And so the thing is people will get stuck on these challenges that come up and say, you know, and it'll create obstacles, and they'll just, you know, what you have to do is you always have to be listening and checking in to see, like, well, what is, and whether you call it your super conscious, your subconscious, the laws of the universe, you have to check in and you have to pay attention to where, you know, how is it guiding you? Because, you know, my vision was for this to be a success. And it would not have been the success had I just been so like attached to it being a certain way. And that's, I believe, another big component to law of attraction is law of detachment. We have to be able to like kind of let go and surrender to some things. They're not going to look exactly identical to how we originally set out to do that. And I've got a lot of stories like that. I think that really does play a huge, huge role in our ability to manifest, is just being able to let go of how we, you know, and if the day is not, you know, the day is not going exactly how we had planned, it's like, well, let's check in and see, are we resisting something that maybe, you know, maybe would send us in a better direction than what we think is the right direction to go.
Is there a way, Victoria, that you suggest when we are sort of stuck in a situation where we are resisting, and, you know, sometimes I speak for myself, and I do check in, but there are times when I sort of not necessarily forget to check in, but things happen so quickly, and sort of to break that state, I might go for a walk, or I might sort of read a book, or I might do something different. Is there something that you suggest, something that you do to sort of to peel away at that resistance? I mean, sometimes, like you mentioned there, for example, if sort of I'm creating something like a new book, or I'm doing a dissertation or research project, if it's sort of not going well, I sort of get the message type thing, and I say, you know what, I'll do something different. I'll just get myself to raise my vibration. What I do is I'll do something I really enjoy doing, or something that just takes me away from my thoughts, and gather my own thoughts. And is that something that you do as well, or do you have a specific thing that you do when things aren't going according to plan, rather than sort of keep going on that treadmill to sort of break that cycle and get yourself back in that zone? Is there a process that you use yourself to get yourself back on track? Or
I do. Well, for one, definitely meditating is first and foremost, is just getting quiet. When I say meditating, sometimes that might mean for somebody doing a guided meditation, but when I say it, I'm actually talking about a silent meditation where you just allow yourself to be silent. So that's number one. Journaling is also another great way. And when I say journaling, I'm talking about almost like automatic writing, because that automatic writing allows you to tap into the subconscious mind and see if maybe there is some resistance, something else going on, maybe some better idea. And one of the exercises I have in my book that helps to break up that detachment or break up the attachment, help you to be more detached, it's called the what if scenario. And so the what if scenario is basically where you say to yourself, what if my idea didn't manifest? Like, what if this just isn't going to happen? And you like let it go, because and you check in with like, well, what is my attached language to this? How am I being toward this? How's my energy toward this? Am I saying like, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to be so mad? You hear people say like, if this doesn't happen, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's just, and if you're having that kind of conversation in your head, that means you're attached. Well, when you're attached, that's creating all kinds of resistance and anxiety and doubt and negative vibration. So all of that is ultimately kind of chasing away what it is that you want. So one of the ways to feel better about your situation is to actually imagine, how could this situation turn out even better? If this doesn't happen, how could this situation manifest in such a way that I will be happy? And and it's really tapping into like the abundance of all the possibilities. Like we look at just this one possibility as being the only one that we're possibly going to be happy with. But if you could see, just like, well, here's another possibility of how this could happen. And when you allow yourself to check in with the abundance of the many different ways that you could end up being satisfied with your goal manifesting, then you're not so attached to that, and you can kind of let it go.
Absolutely.
And I think, I think there's there's some beauty.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely with that, Victoria. One of the things I learned in my own life to do is not spend too much time in a place where I don't feel resourceful. And, in years gone by, I used to sort of, I wouldn't say be afraid of it, but it'd be more like, thinking to myself where, what if I don't get this done? What if I don't achieve that? But I've come to realize in my life that sometimes best laid plans and the things you sort of think you really want in the end, you don't really want subconsciously. And the reality is, I've sort of learned to live a life, and my sort of big emphasis is on creating a life of meaning. And if you've got meaning and purpose, then you're on the way. And I've learned through experience, sometimes you don't get that job. The seminar doesn't go that well. The book doesn't sort of, you put so much work into it, you get a bad review, someone says something like that. You've got all great reviews at number one, but the point being, but the point being is like, something doesn't go to plan. I've had situations in sport. We've had a really great run and we've been top of the table and flying, and release a book, it goes to #1, and everything's going perfectly well, and you sort of you're buzzing. Then all of a sudden, bang, things just sort of come crashing down. But I've learned to embrace that, and in a weird way, I kind of sometimes embrace the feeling, and I think, okay, what can I learn from the situation I'm in, and then re-navigate, because I know sometimes it doesn't go the way you wanted to go, but you're in a better place for it. And I think that sort of having that faith that if it doesn't go your way, then in a year, 5 years time, you might look back and think, you know what, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. And that's one of the things I sort of think about, in terms of keeping that vibration level high and activity schedule and doing things throughout the day that, can help to achieve that. But what's your take on that when one experiences a wobble to not stay there for as long as they need to stay there?
The thing is that, okay, a lot of times people are afraid to experience negative feelings because, as we know, the law of attraction is all about your vibration, and you are attracting whatever it is that you're vibrating. But if you're resisting the negative feeling, guess what? That is a negative vibration. And so it's actually okay to experience a little bit of negativity. We just want to experience it for a short period of time. And I think the quicker we can allow ourselves to embrace it, like you say, the quicker we're going to move through that, because that's the only way to that's the only way to overcome the negative emotions and thoughts and feelings is actually to look at them. I'm not sure who originally said that, but what you focus on expands, but what you look at disappears. If you look at something long enough, if you have a pain in your body, for example, and most of the time we're just kind of we're trying to ignore that pain. We're trying to look everywhere else so that we don't have to touch that pain with our mind and with our emotions. But if you actually put your focus on that pain for a little bit, you'll actually notice that it's not really there. It will dissipate. And so the same thing is true for our emotions. If we actually look at and feel the emotions and write about them and think about them for just a little bit, then it will dissipate. And we also have to realize too that how can we possibly even know what happiness is,
Absolutely.
or love, or all of those feelings if we don't know the opposite? The only way we can know something is in that's why we live in a duality universe. Is you can't know that something is warm unless you experience the opposite effect of being cold. And so we're going to so we want to embrace both emotions and both thoughts as much as possible.
No, absolutely. And I think for me as well, one of the biggest influences of the generation now is certainly social media, and it's a great social media is fantastic. We can have this conversation across the other side of the world, and there's a lot you can do with social media. But I also think that sometimes what people do, Victoria, and I could be wrong, it's just my perception, is they compare their life to someone else's showreel. Like they'll see snippets of another person's life and think, well, why have they got such a great life? And that for me in itself is not necessarily a negative thought. There's nothing wrong with trying to improve yourself, but the reality is it's about you starting with where you are. And, I think that great. I mean, obviously, when I see things and people doing stuff, I think it's fantastic. I think it's amazing to see people do well. I love to see, people like yourself get a #1 book and travel, and you deserve it. You put the work in for it. But I think for some people, sometimes they sort of, it can be overwhelming in the sense that they think, well, am I doing enough? Am I enough? And they forget to just run their own race. And I think that in itself can affect our thought process where,
it's so true. And it's their perception of, I'm posting, I'm very biased about what I post, I'm not posting, the the horrible breakdown,
Yeah.
that I had with my husband the other night,
Yeah.
or I'm not posting about the cat piss that I had to clean up the other day, or, when I say like, I'm traveling all over the world, I'm not posting about the thousands and thousands of dollars that are on the line.
Absolutely, yeah.
That that I had to put out
Yeah.
with my own money in order to do that. I'm saying, I'm putting out there because I want to inspire people, and I want people to see what's possible. And, there's definitely, it's not an overnight success. You're not going to just wake up one morning and have a #1 best-selling book, or wake up one morning and be an international speaker. You actually have to take some risk.
Absolutely. And I think you're obviously a genuine person, an honest person, because you come from an industry where from the banking point of view, you could have like myself, I came from a sporting environment, so I was doing well in sport. It was from a financial point of view, I took a big risk to do what I do now, in the sense that from the stability to a great life, but I just thought there was that little bit I could be doing more. So the reason why I left full-time professional sports to embark on the journey now many years ago, I thought, well, there's more to me than this. And whilst I enjoyed it, I felt guilty a bit at the time, stepping down and moving forward. And people were saying, you're mad and you're leaving a career. But I thought, no, there's more to me. I want to influence the world in a broader way. I'm not just about doing performance in sport. I work in many areas, in radio, write books, I work in therapy, similar to yourself in some respects. And the point being is that for me, that sort of shows that when you believe in something, you go out there. It's not a question of sort of, not sort of practicing what one preaches. And I like your honesty, people don't put on the internet when they've stubbed their toe and whatever else. But the point being is you've got to sort of keep focused, I think, for me, on what you want, and remind yourself of what you're wanting. And I think going to the feeling first makes a lot of sense for me. Like, no doubt when you were writing your book, you felt what it was like to be a #1 bestseller, and you've sort of stayed in the charts for such a long time, which is a great achievement, and I say that because I've written a number of books, Victoria, so I know how hard it is to do that, in the sense that, it takes a lot of work, and no one flukes it. You might get a week in #1 in the category, but to be there for months on end is fantastic stuff. But did you, and for people sort of watching this, contemplating writing, did you have the vision of your book? Was that one of your visions, is to sort of get it out there and sort of be as influential as you have been in that way with the book? Or
So I'll give you a little bit of the backstory in the book. So I was not planning to write a book at all. I knew that one day, just like most people who think about writing a book, I think most people think one day I'm going to write a book. I've almost everybody I've ever talked to, even my husband says he wants to write a book. People say that they want to write a book, but most people don't. And I was one of those people. I was exactly right there. And so anyway, it was Selena at HypnoBiz that had suggested that I create a law of attraction certification training course. And so I'm like, well, that would kind of require me to write a curriculum for that. And I, at that time, I had a lot of my own ideas about law of attraction, the way it worked, but I really hadn't solidified it into any sort of process or any of that. Like I just had all my ideas, but they were scattered. They were just years and years of, these are my ideas. And so I decided, well, if I'm going to create this certification training course, then I think what I would want to do first is go ahead and write that book. People had been telling me earlier in the year, other clients and people, you need to write a book. There's a book in you. I can see that. I was like, no, I don't have time for that. And so I decided to go ahead and break ground on that so that I could put together my my training course. And honestly, I was not even thinking of the book at that very original time when I first started writing it. I wasn't even thinking of it in terms of like being a #1 bestseller when I very, very first started writing. But then I talked to Michael Lozier, who wrote he wrote a book. He's one of my mentors on law of attraction. And we just kind of sat down, we started talking, and he said, you know, you could be a #1 bestseller. And so in a way, he kind of gave me the idea
Put the
that I
seed into
could
your
be.
mind. Yeah, yeah.
He put the seed in my mind, and I started like really looking at this, and I started, you know, really visualizing that, and really figuring out, okay, well, what are the components that would need to be in place? So at that time, that's when, you know, I really kind of started writing my book, like in, you know, a little bit more definite, that as I'm writing this, my intention is to be a #1 bestseller. And the other kind of cool thing that happened that helped me along was I was part of a book writing group of a book. We wrote a joint book together, and that one became a #1 bestseller. So so I sort of understood the process a little bit more when I was invited to, you know, be a co-author with that book, and I understood kind of what I needed to do. But what was kind of cool, this was a kind of cool thing. So I got a couple like endorsements from some of the teachers in The Secret, like Bob Doyle and Joe Vitale, who I did not really know before I started writing my book. And but all the while when I was writing my book, you know, and you know how you put your book into the format that it's going to be, their names were in that space where the praise from these people, their names were right there the whole time. Every time I would open up my book, and you know, I would see their names there. It was just little googly gog, like nothing real. And every time I would see it, so it was kind of cool because I manifested having them as endorsers of my book, just from, I mean, it was like almost in the exact same order of how I imagined them being and appearing in my book as the endorsements.
Yeah.
And I just reached out to each person that I wanted to endorse my book, and they said yes.
Wow.
And
yeah, and that's amazing.
And so that was that was pretty cool. So you know,
absolutely, and that's where the law of action comes into it too. I mean, the law of attraction is one thing, but you have to act upon. One would think it's you know, you got to be proactive. And you know, you mentioned Selena. I really admire the way she is in HypnoBiz, and I think that, you know, she's a doer. Whether it's that sort of New York spirit, I don't know, but it's sort of, you know, you've got to have, I think, at least in my opinion, that sort of action, that get up and go, where, you know, when you get up in the morning sometimes and things don't go your way, you know, get into that vibration and, you know, get the gratitude list going, go for a walk, have a green juice, do whatever it takes to get into the right state, and then go for it. Then if anything doesn't go your way, just, you know, step by step, keep going. And that's really interesting. But you mentioned something that's really interesting to me, which I think is important too, is you mentioned you joined the book club. Now, for me, I speak at a lot of events like yourself. And originally, when I first started my journey, Victoria, I wasn't a natural speaker, believe it or not. I'm into music and sports. And if you put me in music, I'm happy to have people, you know, around me. In sport, I'm happy to have even 1,000, whatever, watching. But you put me in front of people to speak, you know, it's a different story, especially when there's a smaller group.
Yeah.
And that's something that I had to overcome in the beginning, you know, many, many years ago. And people find it hard to believe is that, I mean, I would say I'm more of an introverted character than an extroverted character. I'm much more happier researching. I love researching, but I do enjoy presenting my findings and talking to people.
Yeah.
I do love the conferences and doing that. But one of the things I did is I joined a speaking group to refine my skills.
Yes.
So do you think it's important, if we have a goal or a vision, to get around people who want the best for us and we want the best for them, and we can sort of, you know, like we do at the conferences, you know, you meet people and you bounce ideas, and you know, you might not, you know, have the same ideas, but just being around that sort of energy and vibration.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that probably for me is one of the lessons that took the longest, because I'm just like you. I used to think I was extroverted because I do like to sing and be in front of people on stage, but I kind of realized that doesn't have anything to do with being an extrovert. Yeah. You know, I'm actually more introverted, meaning, you know, I just tend to be more productive on my own, and I tend to need to recharge myself on my own. If I'm at a conference, I'm there. I'm 100% there. I'm interacting with people. I love people. But boy, like the second it's over,
Yeah.
don't approach me.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I unplug. Like this, like I tell myself, okay, I need to be on until October 21st at 6 p.m. and then bang, I'm completely unplugged. But that being said, being that I have a tendency to kind of have a little bit of that hermit mentality, that was holding me back. And, you know, because I wasn't around people and I wasn't really getting ideas. I wasn't getting that. So as much as I resisted having friendships and having colleagues and having these partnerships, as much as I resisted that, I didn't realize that that was actually holding me back. And it really, things really started progressing and moving a lot further along, a lot quicker, once I really started going to a lot more hypnosis conferences. And, you know, I was not even doing that because I didn't really get the value of that. I'm like, well, I'm, you know, just kind of a solopreneur, how you pronounce that. And, you know, I was doing mostly just the hypnosis recordings on my website. So it's like, what do I need people for?
Yeah.
Well, you know, to get to that next level of humanness and to expand myself and to become, you know, and one of the things I was hiding from was public speaking for a long time, even though it was like a dream of mine, something I really wanted to do. I kind of lied to myself about that because I didn't want to take that risk. I didn't want to create something and have people not show up or have it be so hard to get people there. But, you know, something clicked, and I'm trying to remember the name of the book. She wrote several books, and it's like the name of the books and the name of the authors on the tip of my tongue, but I'm not going to come up with it right on the tip of my head. You are a badass at making money. That's what it's called. You are a badass at making money. And I read that book, and that book spoke to me so much. And it had everything. It had hypnosis. It had law of attraction. It had a lot of things. But one of the things that she did mention in there is getting out of your comfort zone and taking risks.
Yeah.
That is definitely something that needs to happen in order for you. I mean, it's all out there. Anything that's inside of your comfort zone is going to keep you exactly where you are.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And it's about keep going. And for me, this is going back nearly 20 years ago now, one of the first talks I did, it just went horribly wrong. It couldn't have gone any worse. And I'd worked so hard to do it. And, you know, and I'd like to say the second talk went better, but it went even worse. And I thought, you know, what do I do? And I took a time out. I took, you know, a couple of months out. I sort of looked at a few coaches, a few people who could help me along the way. I found somebody who sort of resonated with me. And I went back in there and I just thought, well, the way forward here is to not try and be someone else, is just be me. Just step in my own zone and be comfortable and just my own style. Because some people are saying you got to do it this way, some people you got to do it that way. And I thought, you know what, the best way for me going forward is just be me and stand up. And I never looked back after that. Obviously, since then I've been speaking. I get to travel around the world and speak and to many audiences and that sort of stuff. My message to people is just, if you really want to do something, you just got to keep going. And it might not go well the first time, but if you really want to do it, and you just got to keep going and keep extending that comfort zone. And eventually, you know, you will get there for sure. But you're speaking speaking of talks, you're speaking in the UK as well. I mean, you obviously,
I am.
So the UK conference, the hypnotherapy conference, and I'll be speaking there as well, actually. But what are you going to be delivering there, Victoria? What's the seminar you're doing there?
Yeah. So first, so I'm going to be in the UK for almost 2 weeks, from the 4th until the 18th. And so the first part of my trip is the UK Hypnosis Convention, and I am delivering a 1-hour talk there called Law of Attraction 101, Reset Your Vibes. And we're going to go a little bit into detail on, you know, what these 8 manifesting conditions are. and then we're going to play a fun little game that helps you to, it helps you just to kind of straighten out, some of the words and thoughts that you might not realize are inhibiting you from attracting the things that you really want. So it's about not, attracting what you don't want and beginning to start to attract what you do want. So that's what the talk is that I'm going to be doing there in the UK. I believe that is on the Friday.
Okay.
I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And then I thought, since I'm actually traveling to the UK, I would go ahead and do my own law of attraction intensive training, which we just had here in Scottsdale a couple weeks ago. And it was, it's one of those things that you don't know how it's going to go until you do it. And I agonized and agonized. And it's like, I was on the phone with, who Helen Mindus. I was on the phone with her the night because she does a lot of training. She does a lot. And I was like literally in tears the night before. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this without getting so emotional, because I was so emotional. It was like I had been working on putting this seminar together, and I just wanted people to experience what I want them to experience, and I want them to be so anyway, it went better than expected.
Fantastic.
It was amazing. And so I'm actually doing that over the 16th and the 17th of November in London. And I'm so excited about that. Just for the fact, I'm also doing it before I hit London. I've got a quite a tomorrow morning I actually leave for Chicago. So I'm going to be at the Mid-America Hypnosis Conference in Chicago. Then I'm home for 2 days, and then I hit the road again for Toronto for HypnoBiz Canada.
Fantastic.
And I'm doing my conference there.
And you're doing HypnoBiz in the Gold Coast as well next year?
I'm doing it in the Gold Coast as well.
Wonderful,
so I'll be in Australia for 3 weeks.
Fantastic. That's in March next year.
Are you
I'll
doing,
be there.
That's
be
so
there.
cool.
Absolutely. No, I'm looking forward to it too. Now that's amazing stuff, and that's just a credit to you. And so you're generally based in Arizona, Victoria. So you generally, for the most part, you're in Arizona for people to find you.
I am.
Fantastic. No, I really enjoy Arizona. I've been to Arizona on a few occasions. Actually, one of my mentors, he took over the Erickson Institute in. I call him a mentor. He's close as a mentor to me. Jeff Zygo at the Erickson Institute, and I've done training with him for a long time, and whenever I go to Arizona, I make sure I go to Sedona and the Grand Canyon, as you do, and such a beautiful. That's where I get my peace after I've done like a week or two of intensive training, where I've been on the receiving end. I deliver a lot of training, but it's nice sometimes to be on the receiving end, and that's a really amazing place. I really enjoy. Arizona, it's an awesome place. So I'm mindful of time. I'm mindful of time. I know you got to get ready for Chicago. So if anyone's getting in touch with you, have you got like any contact details? You got your sort of Facebook page or anything? If any,
sure. Yeah. Let me give you a little bit. So really, all of my websites and everything is kind of connected now through VictoriaMGallagher.com. So you can just go there and you can find out about my events, my book, my other websites, my app, all of the cool things that I have, all things Victoria that I have going on there. And that's the main way. I do have all of my pages and my Twitter and my YouTube and all of that are Hip Talk, HYPTALK. So it's like Facebook.com/Hip Talk, or Twitter as Hip Talk, or YouTube channel is Hip Talk. So it's all Hip Talk. And so it has been my pleasure to be on.
Great to have you on the show.
It's been fun.
And also they can go to Amazon and type in the Practical Law of Attraction.
There's my book there. So if you just type it, and it's it's still number one.
Long may it continue. It'll good for you. No, congratulations on that. So,
I think that'll be cool. I mean, you've got to do something like to get to Oprah, right? Or to get to like on the news, like
she's
something.
Watching this, then there you go. You never know. Hopefully, you never know.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, she's been a number one bestseller now for 2 years, you know, and counting.
Yeah. Well, you never know. I mean, obviously, it's one of them, isn't it? You got to, keep believing, and if it's meant to be, it'll be, and that's fantastic. So I really want to thank you for coming on board the show. Victoria, have a great time in Chicago, and no doubt we'll sort of catch up at the conference. I think I'm speaking on Saturday anyway at the conference, but I'll double check that anyway. But thanks again for joining us, and
thank
thanks,
you.
Victoria. Thanks so much.
Thank you.